Hello viewers, it's Super GT here, welcome back to another video. And of course, yes, here we are on Gran Turismo Sport once again. Now, plenty of clean races, plenty of very good races I've had on this game. This race is going to be no exception. Let's have a quick look at the top 5 of the grid. This is a manufacturer's cup race, so plenty of different manufacturers on offer. As we can see here, 5 different cars in the top 5. There I am, 4th position on the grid in the BMW. And rounding out the top 5 is the Aston Martin. There are 19 people in the race, so 4th place on the grid is not too bad at all. And we're going to begin the race here at Kyoto. So this is one of the new configurations added to the game. So the Yamagiwa plus Miyabi configuration, so nearly 7 kilometers in total length. It's a very long circuit, lots of corners, lots of different types of corners, so it's a really good challenge, this circuit, and we're going to see exactly what we can do from 4th place on the grid. So there has already been a bit of battling brewing between 2nd and 3rd place. Initially the Russian in 2nd on the back foot, defending against the Italian. The Italian goes very wide in the Alpha into this long left, so I'm going to take the invitation to go up the inside into 3rd place. I'm going to dip to the right hand side here, get a good run on the Porsche down the hill into the hairpin. This is where the two circuits meet around this very tricky hairpin, and it can be extremely easy on the exit of that hairpin to oversteer with traction control off. So in this race, no traction control being used, and I thought because of that, because I'm using no traction, you have to take a very patient approach. So there's a lot of corners here where you're accelerating while turning, and that hairpin is a good example. And because of that, you have to be extremely patient on that throttle, just to make sure you don't oversteer on the exit and spin out. So up into 2nd fairly quickly, and I'm going to hunt down this Spaniard who's on pole position. I sense that we have actually gained through this middle sector of the lap, so we now wind uphill back over to the right into probably the tightest hairpin on the circuit. Actually I think the 2nd tightest corner on the track, or maybe the 3rd even, I don't even know. So okay, just really trying to find my way into the race, because you can often fall foul of pushing too much too early. And of course in these races where you have tyre wear, it's not really as useful to push all out guns blazing, because you will wear out your tyres if you push too hard too early. So this is the end of the first lap, not the final lap. So there we go, crossing the line in 2nd, just under a 2nd behind the Toyota in front. I did notice as I go down that main straight, I was gaining on the Spaniard in the lead, so I do think the straight line speed of this BMW is very strong, and from what I can tell, it is one of the stronger cars in Group 3. So winding through the S's over the crest into the long turn number 6, the left-hander here, can be a very difficult one to get right, especially on the entry. I often get it wrong. In fact, the BMW just really holds its ground and has plenty of grip on the exit. So down the hill, looking for the first white mark, there it is, and onto the brakes. You have to be extremely patient here. This is where it can really go wrong. You see the Spaniard sliding through the exit, and that's what I mean. There's a big bump as you go over the exit of that corner, and that can unsettle the car if you're just a little bit impatient. And through the S's on the shorter circuit here, well, I mean it's all one circuit I guess, and then through the very long left. So lots of these long winding left-handers on the circuit. Then I'm going to try to maximise the exit as we then go back to the left-hand side to get a good run into this very long right-hander, a very long and tricky hairpin, because it's very easy to get on the throttle back now and then start sliding. I sense that the Spaniard was almost sliding through there. And even there, as I got up the hill, you see the car just wanting to snap away. We're just about reining it in and making sure the car doesn't completely spin around. So then into the hairpin, go for that late apex. You can see they often do this on the hairpins, going deep as now the leader makes a big mistake on the exit. I'm going to wind around the outside and take the lead of the race. So coming up towards the end of lap 2, I'll go wide though with that chicane. I'm going to go defensive, force him to the left hand side for this right hander to stay outside line, and then through the apex of the final corner you can see a bit too much curb, makes me get a bit of oversteer through the middle of the corner, but luckily I was just blocking the racing line. There's nowhere he could have gone really except for into the back of me or the very long way round. So fastest lap, actually no, got just immediately taken over by the Irishman in 3rd place. So just winding round the first corner, and we're going to see that the Spaniard is going to stay with me here. I think that Toyota seems to have very, very good handling. I'd imagine, as we just abuse that curb on the exit of the S's, I'd imagine that because my car has good straight line speed, it might slightly suffer in another department, which I presume would be the handling, but it seems to be okay so far. The Toyota though very, very planted through these long corners. So then down into the hairpin, going to make sure we just go for consistency. I think consistency is something we need to really try to aim for, because especially, I mean, I've said it many times already, but when you've got these corners where it's very easy to spin out, you just don't really want to be making any mistakes at all. If you can make a mistake-free race, then you've done very well for yourself. And of course it is a lot easier to do it from the front. So once you're embroiled in those battles in the mid-pack, it can be very difficult to not, to not make mistakes, especially when someone's right on your tail, someone you know might hit you. It can be very, very difficult indeed. Once you get out to the front though, it does make it a lot easier, that must be said. So into the long right-hander, looking for that straight exit. The Spaniard just pops up on the right hand side of the screen. He got a very good run through that corner, and it wasn't quite enough though, so he had to kind of straighten up the car before he got on the throttle, but he had that tight line so he couldn't quite do that. And then I go very deep into the hairpin. You can see there that we have the very annoying text telling me to fuel, which basically sits exactly on your eye line as you're looking through the corners, and that lent to that mistake on the brakes going into the hairpin. So the Spaniard retakes the lead. There's a couple of lead changes here already, which is good to see, and I don't think we've really made any contact at all, which is good to see, because there are some people who are quite okay with nudging you a bit on, or sideswiping you a little bit, but absolutely nothing to report here. The Spaniard seems to be extremely respectful, which is good to see, and he goes very wide actually into the first corner. So once again, another change for the lead, retake first position. So this is the 4th lap, and of course we are going to be doing a pit stop in the race. So presumably we're going to take it at the end of this lap, the 4th lap, which would be exactly halfway into the race. If you divide 8 by 4, then you'll get half the race. Simple maths there. I'm basically Big Shack. So winding right, going down the hill. So then it's very easy once you know your braking points. I've always felt it works in Forza as well, but this time I just grazed the curb basically. I grazed 2 wheels the wrong side of the white line, and it just slows me down. I just slide and get a bit of sideways action going on into the hairpin. So then another lead change. The Spaniard goes back into first position. Can we go about taking it back already? And as he moves over to the right hand side, the space opens up, so I'm going to go for it. So once again, the lead has changed hands. So I do seem to find myself battling with Spaniards a lot in this game. Seem to be my main nemesis nationality in the game, if you'd like to put it that way. Although I think nemesis isn't the right word in terms of this guy, because he seems to be racing very well. Now that's what I'm talking about earlier in the video. Get a little bit too much throttle on while you're still turning, the car will want to slide out, so you really do have to be very careful with that. And then into the hairpin here, going a little bit too deep. I'm going to try to take that late apex, but we don't really get it at all. A long way off the apex. So this is what happens though when you have tyre wear in a race. You do have to slightly adapt the way you drive, as your tyres will begin to go off on lap 3 or 4 of a stint. Normally on the first and second lap you're good to go, you're golden on for grip, but as your stints go on longer into the second half of the stint, then you will begin to experience the lack of grip. So here we go into the pit lane. So opting to go for the hard tyres once again. I mean, you could go softer, but you're really going to pay the price at the end of your stint. So I'm not really going to risk that. And of course the fuel there, we're going to go, need another 4 laps to go. So there we go, on the exit, a really nice animation. I really love the animations here. So it turns out that the Toyota had a very quick stop. Either he used less fuel or he had to put less fuel back in. So saving 1 or 2 seconds and getting back out ahead. Now looking behind, interestingly, the Aston Martin in 3rd place has got closer. So I'm just trying to work out exactly what's happened there. So we just see in the background the Aston Martin maybe about a second behind, not too far behind at all, just lurking ominously in that rear view mirror. So I'm just thinking perhaps he went in a lap early at the end of lap 3. That would explain how he got so close, and of course the first and second laps of his stints are going to be very quick. So I'd imagine while we're still getting to grips with our new tyres, he is well underway with his set of tyres, and he could probably start gaining on this lap. So this 2-way battle at the front could now be a 3-way battle, but you do have to consider if he did pit early, then he would have a bigger lack of grip towards the end of the race. Now that second that the Spaniard had pretty much come down already, so he made a couple of mistakes through this mid-sector of the lap. And then as we open up the steering on the exit of the long left-hander, the space is going to open up. We're going to go for the move into the hairpin. So lots of overtaking opportunities on this lap, because you do have lots of hairpins, lots of tight hairpins. So plenty of places where you have long braking zones, you can get alongside and get firmly up the inside. And we do exactly that. So going up into 1st place, so for the countless amount of times the lead has changed, it's changed once again. So a really good battle developing here. But now we need to really try to get the hammer down, because you see, as we look behind there briefly, perhaps it isn't a 3-way battle, it's a 4-way battle for the lead, although the 4th place guy isn't right on the tail of the Aston Martin, so he's going to have to do a bit more work for that to be the case. So on the exit, going for that straighter line on the exit, just to help with the lack of traction control. Go deep on the way in, let the car pivot mid-turn, and then take a straighter line out. That helps you get a nicer amount of traction without wheel spin at all, and I suppose it would help you preserve your tyres. So it's good in many ways doing that. And that of course will lessen the amount of mistakes that I'm going to make, which is also a big bonus. So through the S's, he's still there, still on my tail. If he's within, let's say, that 6 to 7 tenths mark, he will be experiencing the slipstream, and he certainly is within that kind of range. So ideally I'd like to get beyond a second ahead of him, and then he can really start having to push very hard to catch me back up. So just not making any mistakes through there. And when I was practicing, I made loads of mistakes on the exit of that corner, spinning out pretty much every other lap. It is so easy to do with no traction control, and as I said at the beginning, just changing my approach, aiming for consistency, aiming for less mistakes. It might seem slower, but I think over the course of a 20-minute race, which this is going to be, it probably adds up to be faster overall with the less mistakes that you do. So, you know, it's up to you really to find the perfect balance, and I think striking it here with this BMW, the car actually really helping a lot. Bit of a hint of oversteer there, just reining it in before it really became anything worse, and then winding right into the 35R left hairpin. So he's just going to poke his nose into the bottom of the screen, make his presence known. So I did open up a gap slightly in the mid part of that lap, but then as we come back towards the slower stuff, he does actually bring that gap back down again. So I can't really afford to get complacent here, because he is going to really put me under some pressure. And the gap has actually opened up to 1 second again, So I think he must have made a mistake through that chicane section just a moment ago. So that is 3/4 of the race done. And as we had a quick look behind, he's definitely dropped back, perhaps into the clutches of the Aston Martin. So that was the fastest lap of the race so far. Although once again, we've got a bit of deja vu there. The Irishman just takes over immediately. So I did have a brief 5 seconds of glory with the fastest lap before it got taken over. But now, that has helped me massively against the Spaniard, because that gap has opened up definitely, and I can afford to be a tiny bit more careful. I can just conserve those tyres a little bit more than I would, and the Spaniard's definitely going to have to start pushing as we do approach the end of the race. Only a lap and maybe 2/3 to go. I'm going to bring the battle back here though, as I do have a bit of a gap. There was a yellow flag into this section, and the Aston Martin is going to go up the inside of the Spaniard. The Spaniard's going to retake him, so lots of overtaking under yellow flags here. But then the Aston Martin up the inside makes contact with the Toyota. All of this under yellow flag conditions where you're not supposed to overtake. But after all of that, it looks like the Spaniard has come off worst, making contact with the Aston Martin, who is now in second place. We're riding on board with the fastest man in the race, the Irishman. And as I go into the next corner, you can see that gap has opened up quite a bit there, so maybe 3-4 seconds. That contact between this group has definitely slowed them down. This is something that often happens in racing games. You'll find as you get towards the end of the race, if that gap is opening up, if you've got a bit of a margin, the people behind, if they're in a group, they're just going to start fighting. They basically give up on catching up, and they just think, right, we're just going to battle amongst each other now. As the Subaru up the inside of the Aston Martin, the Mercedes making contact with the back of the Aston and getting a bit of a slide on the exit. So the Aston Martin down into third place now, the Subaru, the Frenchman, into second. The Aston Martin though goes very wide into the wall, makes a big mistake, and he's going to lose a position out of that. So the Mercedes up into third place, the fastest man on the track in third. So I'm going to cross the line there to begin the 8th and final lap. So my lap there a little bit slower, 2 seconds slower. I do have a 4-second margin to second place, so this really ought to be a victory in the bag, as long as I don't do anything really stupid. So I'm just going to kind of just drive as I was. There's no point in really changing. Sometimes if you drive too slow, you just do things differently, and you're more likely to make a mistake that way. So we're going to go back to the battle here for second place. These guys, the gaps have actually opened up slightly between this little quartet as we wind around the long left. So the Mercedes, I've driven it a fair few times in this class, and it is a very good car. It is tricky to drive on the corner exits. It does like to oversteer quite a bit, but this guy seems to be making good use of it. The WRX very wide, but just about managing to get back in line to keep his second place. But this does make the battle very enticing now, with only about half a lap remaining. Can the Irishman here in the Mercedes do something about this Frenchman in the Subaru? Let's not forget though that the Spaniard in the Toyota, he's been ever present in the race. His second half of the race though hasn't been quite as good as his first half, and he has dropped down to 4th, but he is still present in this battle, and he is there to pick up any pieces should this get nasty. Into the hairpin, and the Subaru takes a very nice line through there. Big bump halfway through the corner, that can unsettle the car. They've both taken it very well though, and then winding up the hill for the final time, and then going to the right, braking pretty much at the end of that text on the ground, the 35R that's written on the floor. Just braking pretty much at the end of that, with a couple of corners left to go. Is he going to be able to do anything, and will the Spaniard be able to pick up any pieces should anything go disastrously wrong? He's gone very wide, and he's going to have to certainly go defensive here into the final corner. I'm going around the final corner right now. In fact, I'm on the main straight, I think, just about now. So is he going to be able to do anything? I don't think he is now. It's going to be too late. So there I am. I'm going to finish the race in first place and cross the line to win. And the Irishman so close on the line into the slipstream as he was going down the main straight, but it wasn't quite enough, and he's going to finish in 3rd place. So a good little battle there. Shame for the Spaniard they had to drop down so far. Making contact with that Aston Martin. Bit of battling there. It just shows you a bit too much fighting and you can lose all the time in the world. Perhaps if they worked together they might have been able to catch me up. But there we go, guys, another exciting race on Gran Turismo Sport. I do hope you enjoyed as always. I'll be making plenty more on this game. Absolutely loving my experiences of Gran Turismo Sport, and I'm hoping that you enjoy the videos. And if you do, of course, do smash that like button and subscribe for much more of the same. I do hope to see you in the next one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I am always interested to know what your thoughts are. I hope to see you in the next one as always. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.